Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Mary, and we are on part 3 of supporting your fear and opening to your courage. Last week we talked about ways to support your fear, and today we're going to be talking about opening to your courage. So, the most important part of opening to your courage is the recognition of the fear. So, not trying to shove it away, stuff it down, deny it's there. Those behaviors have a tendency, much like if you're trying to shove something in a very small box, have a way of spilling out in lots of different ways for us. So, acknowledging first our fear and bringing in appropriate supports for it. A lot of times, and we touched on this last week, depending on our belief systems around fear, or maybe what we were told growing up, it's important to recognize the ways now that we can implement things that help us to feel held, nurtured, loved during those times when we need the most support. And again, a few things I touched on last video: supporting your physical body, talking to yourself kindly, right? So remembering those tools in those moments and not pushing away or denying that fear that's there. Because the definition of courage is acknowledging that there is fear and there is still an action that chooses to move forward despite it. So, holding what it is that we want, right? The action, the moving forward, the thing that we want most, and fear is the equation of courage, combining them together. So, holding our fear with love, making the choice that although we're afraid, we're still going to move forward and do the thing. Do the thing could look like public speaking, maybe taking a road trip, maybe jumping on a plane after a long, long time of not flying. So acknowledging that sense where we feel uncomfortable or maybe we have anxiety around things, and trusting that one part of holding and supporting our fear is also facing it or acknowledging it. And recognizing that in order to do that, that takes practice. A lot of times I think we think that if we are courageous, that something should feel very automated to us and we shouldn't feel fear at all. And it would make sense to me that if something that you're doing, you're out of practice around, right? So take, for instance, when we all came out of artist in residence or quarantine or whatever we were calling it around COVID. And we began to slowly but surely start to branch out or reach out in the world again. I'm sure there was a sense for a lot of us of hesitancy, right? So we acknowledge the importance of keeping ourselves safe in the world and that desire to still, despite the fear, to move out, to move forward with what it is that we need to do. So we acknowledge needing to bring in the proper supports. So maybe first venturing out, you make sure you have your mask on, you stay 6 feet away, right? And you gradually start to trust based on the recommendations of keeping ourselves safe, what the next appropriate steps are for you as you start to move out in the world. COVID was an amazing time for us to practice this, right? We're there on an overarching sense, we were actually all afraid to be near one another. We were afraid each other would make one another sick. And the effects of that kind of anxiety or fear, it's important to really support ourselves and soften when we start to transition back into our world and opening more and more to trusting again. And that takes practice. It takes baby steps, and it also takes continuing to support your fear. You don't have to throw yourself over the edge. If you're working with a tremendous amount of fear in your body as you start to venture forward, it is possible to take smaller steps, right? feeling that sense of discomfort is okay. And moving all the way out and over and throwing ourselves over the edge is not what we want, right? We blow out our nervous system, we deplete ourselves. So, how can we softly, through a practice, begin to edge our way towards what it is that we fear, that we know we're going to choose, right? We're going to choose courage and keep moving forward without pushing ourselves totally over the edge. How can we hold ourselves, keep checking in and making courageous steps forward without hurting ourselves with our anxiety, with going too quickly in or towards something, right? It's okay to give yourself permission to baby step in. So maybe your fear is getting on a plane after you haven't been on a plane in a long, long time. Maybe the first steps to this looks like you looking at pictures of a plane, you looking at travelers. Maybe you drive past the airport, you see how it feels in your body, right? So you're inching, literally inching steps closer to your goal. Maybe if your fear is public speaking and you want to practice courage, moving towards that, maybe at first don't choose to public speak for 2 hours long, right? Maybe choose a group of friends that feel good for you. They're going to be supportive. Have them maybe come over for dinner and practice maybe a 5-minute speech in front of them, right? Gradually increasing without throwing yourself totally over the edge, right? When we throw ourselves totally over the edge, what ends up happening is we go, see, I knew I couldn't do it anyway, right? It's okay to be nice to yourself. Again, it's okay to keep checking in, know what your capacity is. The other thing is from day to day, our capacity can also change with our courage muscle, right? On days where we're exhausted or we feel depleted or maybe we're sick, our energy is going to naturally be running lower on that day. So running courageous experiments on the days where we don't necessarily feel the best, you might want to hold off on, okay? Being nice to yourself. It's a good one. The other piece that is always helpful for me when I am practicing my courage, I'm taking baby steps towards it. I'm embracing a sense of discomfort without throwing myself over the edge. I also like to listen to leaders and teachers who are also very courageous. So the teachers and the speakers and the places of inspiration where people talk about the fact that they may have fear, they may have anxiety around something, and they're not somehow not talking about that or denying that in some way as they talk about the fact that they still get up and do public action in the world. They speak to large groups of people, right? They do the thing that most inspires you, and they're honest with you about the fact that they're probably afraid. A great example of this is Brene Brown. Her books, her writings, her talks are very inspirational to me because as a leader, she also talks openly about her vulnerability, which is a game changer. So I highly recommend you checking out Brene Brown if you haven't, or maybe revisiting some of her work, as she's got a couple really great books that talk about courage and leadership and stepping forward and how to do that in a way that's authentic and vulnerable for us. So here's to softly, sweetly, slowly, you moving towards more and more as you strengthen that courage muscle towards the things that you want the most in the world. And recognizing that you are not alone. Some of the most brilliant humans on this planet are also having moments of brand newness and working through their own fear too. It is definitely a process for all of us. So it's a shared experience. So in any way that that can bring you a sense of comfort, please allow it to. And I see your courageousness. The last thing I want to leave you on is sometimes our minds have to associate, courage or bravery to really big actions in the world that are really bold and affect hundreds of people. And that's not true. Some of the most courageous things we do, maybe no one else in that moment has any idea how courageous we are for doing it. And I really want to encourage you to stop and honor yourself in those moments. That could look like the days where you get out of bed, you start the new job. The process of getting dressed in the morning to the car could feel really courageous for you. Stop, breathe, and celebrate yourself as you're doing it. Everything that we do that's courageous doesn't have to be some big, elaborate, or dramatic action. Sometimes the smallest things we do in our world are courageous. Sometimes that's being kind, maybe to strangers during times when we don't necessarily feel very kind with ourselves, maybe being vulnerable in that way, right? Or smiling or opening up could be very courageous, right? So other people don't always applaud or notice are some of our most divine moments of courageousness, but just acknowledging in all those quiet moments for you that I see you, that I acknowledge that, and congratulations. So I'll leave you with that. I'll continue to do different topics of interest here on YouTube. And I feel really honored to have you join me, and thank you for your courageousness and opening up to your fear and listening to this video with me. So appreciate your time. Big love to each one of you, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.